I chose this topic for our Learning Through Connection today, acceptance and growth, because right now we are going through so many transitions as a society right now. There is a pandemic, there is the anti-racist movement that is going on right now. And in all of these external movements that are kind of going on around us, it's a great time to end up looking inwards to kind of see where we're at. And when we can see where we're at, we can more so know where we want to go. It's like looking at a map and not knowing where you are on that map is not so helpful to know where direction you need to go in. So today is going to be about finding that place of where you're at, and then utilizing that to kind of envision where you'd like to go forward. So with things feeling disjointed on the outside, they can feel a little bit more grounded on the inside when we know where they're coming from. A lot of times too, it can be hard to live a values-based life, which is a lot of what acceptance commitment therapy talks about, is this like values-based life. And when we are going through like all of these transitions and all of these changes and it's super hectic around us, then it can be hard to get in touch with what our values are, what we're really thinking. When we're going so fast, it can be hard to get in touch kind of with ourselves. So that kind of brings us into why arts. And so expressive arts therapy includes different ways of expression, whether that's through play, through sand tray, through music, or art or drama. And today we're going to be doing art. And so why I really love using art in a way that kind of externalizes our issues is that putting something on paper can really take it from this abstract idea and put it into something like more concrete for ourselves. By externalizing something and putting it on paper, we are also seeing it as a part of ourselves instead of our whole selves, right? Because when we go through like all of these transitions, it can feel super overwhelming to us, and we don't always know how to piece out how we're actually feeling about something, because it just feels like it's our whole self instead of just this part of us. So we can do that. We can use art to externalize how we feel. It can also help us to engage in new neural networks. And so what neural networks are just patterns that happen in the brain. And these are patterns that happen over time. And so when we're stressed out, or we're in fight or flight, or we're going through something really big, then our imagination and creativity get a little bit less. Like, it's when we're under stress, we can go into black and white thinking more easily. So instead of thinking of, 5 different roads that we could take, we think of one road that we can take and can get stuck on that kind of road. So what using art does is it's using that creativity and that imagination to create these new neural networks to get to different kinds of solutions in different ways. So Carl Jung is like a founder of psychoanalytic theory and psychology, and he actually was one of the first people to recognize that coloring and relaxation go hand in hand. And we found later, so Carl Jung was super into mandalas, which are the circles, and they're very complex. And we find later in science that the cerebral cortex parts of our brain used for vision and used for like fine motor skills actually turn on relaxation in our brain. So they help to calm the amygdala, which is where our like fight or flight response is. And these parts that are turned on through vision and fine motor skills actually help calm us down. So when we're able to be more calm, we can get into more flexible ways of thinking. Using art is also a way to get out of our logical brain. So we have like our logical brain, which holds all of our thinking and our neocortex. And then underneath that, we have our emotional brain, our limbic brain. And that's where we hold emotions, arousal, memory, and all of that. And then below that, we have our survival or our basic reptilian brain. And so what art does is it helps us to sink into our more limbic or emotional brain and get past the thinking kind of part of our brain, because the thinking kind of part of our brain can get really stuck in rationalizations, and it's like, oh, well, this doesn't make sense. So therefore, like, why is it happening if it doesn't make sense? And our emotional brain is much more complex in the way that we are attached to certain things and stuff like that. And also, when we're using our words to kind of describe things, we have certain connotations with certain words. So even words like acceptance or growth, it lends to, other things that you connect with those kinds of words. And so sometimes when we are describing our past self, or if we're describing our present self or our future self, we tend to get like stuck in these either nice words for ourselves or more like mean words for ourselves, and they can be attached to a lot of different meanings. So that art kind of helps us to drop out of that rational thinking brain and into that more emotional brain to meet ourselves where we're at and actually embody the experience that we're having. So I've talked a little bit about ACT, or acceptance commitment therapy, and the way that it focuses on our values and living aligned with our values. But what ACT's framework is all about is embracing your thoughts or feelings rather than fighting or feeling guilty about them. So that might feel kind of confusing at first, because maybe you don't want to accept a part that doesn't feel good, but we're accepting that it serves a certain role for us. And so instead of fighting with that, we're accepting where we're at, and then we're learning to kind of grow through that with more information that's giving us. So when it is paired with mindfulness, it can be really effective in kind of learning more about what you'd like your life to look like instead of where you're at right now, or appreciate the places that you actually are at right now. So we'll transition into our exercise now, which I'm super excited about, and I'm really thankful that you guys all are here and with me today to do this. So you can use any kind of writing utensil. It can be a pen, marker, pencil, whatever is kind of nearby. And so this exercise is going to help us become more embodied with that growth and acceptance. And with your piece of paper, you're going to fold it in 3 different sections. So kind of like you're stuffing it in an envelope. So something like that. And why we're folding it is to just create like 3 different panels that are pretty equal to each other in size. So maybe you can freehand that, but I definitely need to fold. That helps me out. All right. So with this, we're going to hang on to our paper, but we're going to shift gears just lightly and do a body scan. So the body scan is going to help us to just kind of understand where we're at right now, what kind of sensations we might be holding with us today. If you have never done a body scan before, I'm just going to walk us through different parts of the body so that we can notice different sensations. If you have done a body scan and you do not want to do one today, please don't feel like you have to. You can choose to do something else, to black out your screen or what have you. And I'm just going to lightly kind of take us through a body scan to give us some more sense of awareness of ourselves today. So whenever you're ready, you can kind of find some comfort in your seat. And as you might adjust, I'll ask you to notice any kind of shifts of the body as you shift in your seat. And you can feel free to close your eyes or lower your gaze during this exercise. You can also keep them open if that feels comfortable or right for you today. I'll ask you to start to notice just the air kind of around your head and your shoulders. Notice if this space around your head and shoulders is busy. Is it fast? Is it slow? Is it heavy or is it light? And just noticing the space around our heads and shoulders. Now coming inwards into our head and face, noticing any kind of tension or looseness here. Maybe noticing the pace of our thoughts. Are they fast, slow? Are they jumbled? Are they more organized? Coming down into our neck and shoulders, down into our arms, all the way to our fingertips. Noticing any kind of tension or looseness here. Any other types of sensations. Coming back up to our chest space, noticing our heartbeat, if it's fast or slow. Maybe it's soft or loud. Noticing our breath here. Maybe our breath is ragged. Maybe it is smooth. Maybe it is shallow, or maybe it's deep. Maybe something else. Coming down to our stomach area, noticing if there's any sensations here, hunger, thirst, fullness. Just simply noticing what we're holding in our bodies today. Coming down into our seat, our thighs, knees, calves, and shins. Noticing again any tension or looseness here. Coming down into our ankles, all the way into our feet, connecting us with the world around us, into our toes, and just noticing any sensations, tightness, or looseness here. And whenever you feel ready, you can kind of flutter your eyes open if you've had them closed, and rejoin me in this space if it feels right to do so. When you rejoin me in this space, the purpose of this exercise was to really see how our body is holding stress, how our body is holding relaxation or joy, and just becoming more attuned with our sense of self in this vehicle that carries us around. So now that we've gotten a little bit more embodied in our sensations, I'm going to ask us to revisit our paper so that we can begin our art exercise. So as we pick up our paper, you can use your dominant hand, or you can even get really wild with it and use your non-dominant hand to draw the following things. You can mess around with it, whatever feels right for you. But for these different panels, there will be a different topic for each panel. So in our first panel, we'll be focusing on some sort of younger version of ourselves. And how we're going to describe ourselves in these panels is through abstract shapes. So we're only using these abstract shapes to describe ourselves in each panel. And that means using things that aren't associated with like representing a bird, as beautiful as birds can be, just using lines and more free kind of flowing things, maybe circles or squares and things like that. So we're just using abstract shapes, and we're describing our younger selves, whether that is pre-quarantine, whether that is pre this kind of round of the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests that have been happening, whether this is your younger self as a child or 5 years ago. Whatever makes sense for you today, I'll just invite you to imagine this younger self and describe it onto this first panel with these abstract shapes. So that the second part or second panel on our paper, we're going to kind of revisit that body scan that we just did, that we really embodied these sensations that we're carrying around with us today. And we're going to consider those sensations that came up for us as we are drawing how we are feeling, how we are doing, how we're embodying ourselves today in this present moment. And again, we're using these abstract shapes to describe ourselves in this present moment. And again, by using art and these abstract shapes instead of words to describe ourselves in the moment or in the past, we're creating some more acceptance and compassion around how we're doing today or how we've been doing in the past, by not attaching words that could have various meanings to how we're feeling. And we're just using these shapes to really represent us and accept ourselves kind of where we're at. So we're going to move on to this third part. And you might be able to guess that this is now going to be your future self. So this third part, we're again using those abstract shapes, and we're thinking about how we would like to see ourselves in the future in these abstract shapes through utilizing them. So consider the sensations that you might want to have, the feelings you might want to have, maybe the thoughts, your overall kind of aura of self that you might want to have in the future. And this future can be tomorrow, it can be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, in an hour. It can be whatever feels right for you. And so when reviewing this exercise, I want you to consider what might have been hardest for you, what might have been easiest for you, what maybe you felt the most attuned with. So what maybe came the quickest for you, what maybe came the slowest, what made you feel good, what might have brought up more uncomfortable sensations. Thank you for participating in this exercise with me.